They set up a toll gate on my driveway. Can you imagine that? On my own land. And when I tore it down with my shotgun, the HOA decided they'd drag me into court. That's how this all began. I live on a ranch that's been in my family for 3 generations. Dirt roads, wide open skies, and oak trees that creak at night when the wind blows through. My grandfather built the barn with his own hands, and my dad taught me how to mend fences before I was tall enough to lift a hammer properly. It wasn't just land. It was memory. It was pride. It was the place where I watched my kids ride their first horses, where my wife and I had coffee every morning looking at the sunrise. And then the HOA came. It started small. I didn't even live in their neighborhood. My ranch sat right next to it. For years, they used a shortcut road that cut across part of my property to get to their fancy little subdivision. I never cared. Neighbors would wave, kids would ride bikes. It didn't bother me. But then Karen showed up. Oh, you know the type. Perfectly trimmed haircut. Sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Clipboard in hand. She marched up one Saturday morning while I was fixing a water line by the fence. "Excuse me," she said in that sharp tone. That meant she wasn't actually asking. "We've decided this road should officially be part of the HOA property. We'll be installing a gate. All members will have access with a key card." I froze. "This is my land," I said. She didn't flinch. "We'll compensate you with a yearly maintenance fee." I laughed. Thought it was some kind of joke. But she wasn't laughing. She handed me a paper, some nonsense about community easements and beautification standards. That was the first time I realized they weren't asking. They were telling 2 weeks later. Came back from the feed store and saw it. A shiny black hand-yellow striped arm bolted right into the ground. A toll gate. On my land. With a keypad box standing like some kind of soldier guarding my driveway, I slammed on the brakes so hard my tires squealed. My hands shook. I walked up to it, touched the metal, cold, out of place. Ugly then. Right on cue, Karen drove up in her SUV, smug smile plastered across her face. She rolled down the window. "Only registered HOA members can pass," she said sweetly. "Don't worry, you'll have an access card once you agree to join." My blood boiled. "Join, lady. This is my ranch road." "My family's road. You can't just—" She cut me off. "We voted. It's done. It's for the community's safety. If you try to bypass it, we'll fine you. And if you damage it," she leaned forward, her voice turning icy, "we'll sue." I'll never forget that moment. The smell of her perfume mixed with the hot dust. The sound of her kid in the back seat chewing gum, blowing bubbles, and her eyes filled with that smug certainty that people like her always carry. That was the exact second I decided this war wasn't going to end with polite words. The next morning, I loaded my old Winchester, the same one my father gave me when I turned 18. I cleaned it, oiled it, and set it gently in the rack of my truck. And when I drove up to that shiny toll gate, neighbors stood watching. Phones out. Whispers in the air. They thought I'd back down. They thought the HOA always wins. I stepped out calm as a man walking into church. Lifted the Winchester. The morning sun hit the barrel like fire. One shot. The keypad box sparked coughing smoke. Another shot, and the striped arm snapped clean in half, falling to the dirt with a thud. Gasps erupted. Karen screamed, "You'll regret this. You'll be in jail." But I didn't hear her. All I heard was the echo of that shotgun rolling across the hills, bouncing off the barns, carrying a message. "You don't own me," for about a week. I thought that was it. I thought I'd scared them off. The road was clear. My ranch was free again. Then the papers came. Certified mail. Thick envelope. HOA versus me. Accusations of destruction of property, endangerment, trespassing on my own land, mind you. They were dragging me into court. My wife sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in her hands, her face pale. My daughter on speakerphone, crying, telling me to settle. "Dad, please, you can't fight them. They have lawyers. They'll bury you." But I couldn't. Not this time. because when I closed my eyes, I saw my grandfather hammering those fence posts. I heard my dad's voice telling me, "Son, never let anyone take what's ours." This wasn't about a gate anymore. This was about respect, about legacy, about every hard-working man who ever stood his ground against bullies in suits. So there I was, standing on my porch, court summons in hand, shotgun leaning by the door. The HOA thought they had me cornered. They thought the law was on their side, but they didn't know the history of this land. They didn't know the records I'd found in the county office. They didn't know the neighbors who were secretly tired of their nonsense. And most of all, they didn't know what I was about to do next. They thought I'd walk in scared. They thought I'd beg for mercy. But the second I stepped into that courtroom, I knew this fight wasn't about me anymore. It was about every rancher, every farmer, every family who ever had something stolen by people with money and paper. The may of the courthouse smelled like old wood and dust. My boots echoed on the marble floor. People in suits stared at me like I didn't belong there. Maybe I didn't, but I wasn't about to let them see fear. Karen was already there. Front row, smiling like she was watching the opening act of a play she'd already seen. She had her whole HOA board lined up beside her men in ties. Women with pearl earrings, smug faces all around. Their lawyer, slick man with hair greased back, strutted like he owned the place. He kept adjusting his gold watch, like he wanted to remind me how expensive his time was. I sat down at my table, alone. No lawyer couldn't afford one. Just me, a stack of papers, and the weight of my family's land pressing on my shoulders. The judge entered, stern and gray-haired. The gavel slammed. Court is in session. Their lawyer spoke first. Smooth voice, polished words. He painted me as a reckless, dangerous man. Said I fired a weapon irresponsibly, endangered children, destroyed community property. Karen dabbed fake tears with a tissue, shaking her head dramatically. She whispered loud enough for the jury to hear. I was terrified for my life. Neighbors from the subdivision testified. We just wanted safety. He's always been difficult. He doesn't understand how community works. They held up pictures of the gate, the broken arm, the shattered keypad box. They even had a video someone had recorded me that morning. Shotgun raised, smoke rising from the barrel. The jury gasped. The lawyer smiled. Karen smirk. It looked bad. Real bad. When it was my turn, I stood up. My knees felt like iron, my throat dry. But I told the truth. I told them about my grandfather. How he carved that road out of rock with nothing but a pickaxe and sweat. How my father used it to haul cattle, to bring hay, to take me to school every morning. I told them how the HOA never asked, never respected boundaries. How one day I woke up and there was a toll gate sitting in the middle of land my family had paid taxes on for 70 years. I didn't deny firing the gun. I looked that jury dead in the eye and said, "Damn right I shot it." Because when someone builds a wall across your home, when they steal your freedom and laugh in your face, sometimes you gotta remind them who they're messing with. The courtroom went silent. The judge shifted in his chair. The HOA lawyer rolled his eyes. But I could see it. A few jurors leaned forward. They weren't looking at a criminal anymore. They were looking at a man standing his ground, just when I thought they had me cornered. Pulled out the papers I'd found in the county records office. Old maps, handwritten deeds, yellowed with age. My grandfather's signature still sharp in ink. They showed exactly where our land began and ended in that shortcut road. The one the HOA claimed as community property? It was 100% on my land. Always had been. I handed it to the clerk. The judge studied it, eyebrows lifting. The jury murmured. The lawyer's smile cracked for the first time. Karen shot up from her seat. That's not valid. That's outdated. The HOA board voted. The judge's gavel slammed. Sit down, ma'am. Her face turned red, lips trembling. For once, she wasn't in control. But they weren't done. The lawyer leaned in, smooth as ever. Even if the land is his, Your Honor, he still committed a crime. He fired a deadly weapon. He endangered lives. Surely that cannot be ignored. And just like that, the jury shifted again. They nodded. Murmurs filled the room. The weight came crashing back on me. They wanted me in jail. They wanted to take the land. They wanted to make an example out of me. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen, I almost gave up. My wife cried quietly, begging me to settle. My daughter called again, pleading, "Dad, just pay the fine. Don't risk prison." But when I looked out the window at the moonlit pasture, I remembered my father's words. Never let them take what's ours. So I made a decision. I wasn't backing down the next day in court. I brought a surprise, an old neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, 85 years old, cane in hand, voice shaky but strong enough. He'd lived by my ranch his whole life. He told the jury how he remembered my grandfather building that road, how he rode his bike on it as a boy, how everyone knew it was ours. But we never stopped folks from using it, because that's what neighbors did back then. The jury listened, leaning forward. Karen rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath. Then Jenkins dropped the hammer. "And I'll tell you this," he said. He's pointing his cane right at Karen. "That woman tried to buy part of the land from him years ago. He said no. She's been after it ever since." "Ah!" the courtroom gasped. Karen's face turned pale. The lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. By the end of the week, the trial felt like a war. Some days it seemed I was winning. Other days, I thought I'd be in prison before the month was out. Karen kept showing up in new outfits, parading around like she was queen of the county. She whispered to reporters in the hallway, spinning her story. The lawyer threw every trick in the book. They said I was unstable, dangerous, a threat to the peaceful suburban life. But every night, I sat at that kitchen table with the deeds spread out. And every night I whispered to my wife, "We're gonna win. I swear it." On the final day, before closing arguments, the judge announced something that changed everything. A county surveyor had been ordered to verify the land lines. His official report would be read in court the next morning. That meant one thing. Either I was right, or the HOA would bury me for good. As I walked out of that courtroom, Karen brushed past me. She leaned in, her perfume sharp, her voice a hiss. "You're finished. Tomorrow, you'll be nothing but a broke old man behind bars. And when you're gone, we'll own every inch of that land." I stared at her, calm, cold, and I said, "Tomorrow, you'll learn something your HOA money can't buy. Truth." The surveyor walked in with a stack of papers under his arm, and in that moment, the whole courtroom held its breath. Because whatever he was about to say, it would decide everything. My land, my freedom, my family's legacy. The judge cleared his throat, the courtroom dead silent. The surveyor adjusted his glasses, flipped through the pages, and read, "The property line between the Johnson Ranch and the Oak Ridge subdivision has been carefully measured. According to county records and deed history, the disputed road lies entirely within the Johnson property. It is not, nor has it ever been, HOA land." Gasps, murmurs, heads turned, the jurors whispered among themselves. The judge nodded slowly, eyebrows raised. I glanced at Karen, her face drained of color, lips trembling like she'd seen a ghost. She clutched her lawyer's arm, whispering furiously. He shook his head, pale himself. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. But Karen wasn't done. She shot up from her chair, her voice shrill, echoing off the wood-paneled walls. "That's a lie. That report is rigged. He's protecting him. This court is corrupt." The judge's gavel slammed. "Ma'am, sit down immediately." But she didn't. She kept ranting, pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal. "He threatened us. He shot at us. He's a danger to this whole community. If you people let him win, none of us are safe." Her voice cracked. Spit flew. The jury just stared, wide-eyed. The bailiff stepped forward. "Ma'am, sit down, or you'll be removed." And right there, in front of everyone, Karen snapped. She threw her papers on the floor, stomped her foot like a child, and screamed, "This was supposed to be our land." The silence that followed was worse than any shout. She realized what she'd just admitted. Out loud in front of the jury, her lawyer buried his face in his hands. The judge didn't take long. He looked over the evidence, the surveyor's report, the deeds, the testimony. Then he turned to the jury. Members of the jury, you may deliberate. But they didn't even leave the room. They whispered for less than 5 minutes. Then the foreman stood. We find the defendant, Mr. Johnson, not guilty on all charges. The HOA had no legal authority to erect a gate on his land. Sound that erupted neighbors clapping, whispers of finally the slam of the gavel. And me? I just closed my eyes, breathed deep, and felt 70 years of family pride lift me up like a storm wind. Karen was escorted out, still shouting, her voice breaking. This isn't over. We'll appeal. We'll ruin you. But the judge stopped her cold. Ma'am, not another word. If you disrupt this court again, I'll hold you in contempt. Her lawyer slunk out like a beaten dog. The HOA board followed, avoiding eye contact, whispering among themselves like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Meanwhile, Mr. Jenkins, old and shaky, patted my shoulder. Your granddaddy would be proud, son. I swallowed hard. Couldn't even speak. That evening, I drove home slow. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. The fields shimmered, and for the first time in months, my ranch felt like mine again. Neighbors lined the fence line as I drove past. Some clapped, some raised their hats. Even a few from the subdivision nodded in quiet respect. When I pulled into the driveway, my wife was waiting on the porch. Tears in her eyes, smile wide. She wrapped her arms around me so tight I could barely breathe. You did it, she whispered. You really did it. And for once, I didn't feel like the stubborn old man everyone said I was. I felt like a guardian, a keeper of something bigger than myself. Word spread fast. Within a month, the HOA president resigned. Half the board quit. Neighbors demanded accountability. How much money had been wasted on lawyers? How many lies had they swallowed? Karen. She disappeared from public view. Rumor had it her husband left her. People whispered about bankruptcy. Some said she moved out of state, ashamed to show her face again. As for that road, I rebuilt it myself. No gate, no keypad. Just a dirt path, same as it's always been. And when kids rode their bikes down it. When neighbors waved as they drove past, I tipped my hat. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. That's what community really means. Standing on my porch one morning, shotgun leaning against the wall, coffee steaming in my hand, I thought about everything that happened. The rage, the fear, the courtroom battles, Karen's screams, but also the pride, the memory of my grandfather's calloused hands, my father's voice, my wife's strength, my daughter's tears turning into laughter when I called her with the verdict. And I realized something. This wasn't just about a road, or a toll gate, or even a shotgun. It was about not letting greed and arrogance erase history. It was about reminding people that respect isn't bought with HOA dues or lawyer fees. It's earned with honesty, hard work, and standing tall when it matters most. So when people ask me if I regret it, I smile. No, not one bit. Because the HOA tried to break me, but instead they broke themselves. And my ranch, my family's land, it's still here, stronger than ever, and that's my story. The day the HOA put a toll gate on my land, and the day I tore it tanned them down for good. What about you? Have you ever had an HOA or a neighbor try to push you around? Tried to take what's yours? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it.